Recording to the cloud. Okay. And everybody can hear me. Welcome. You are at the Launch Your College Application workshop for Schooling Doula and 7 Points Prep College Admissions Counseling. Those of you who are joining me here tonight, you are most familiar with my work through Schooling Doula College Counseling, and I also partner with Sarah Leonard, who is the lead at 7 Points Prep College Counseling, and we're doing this class series together. So if you come to future sessions, either the boot camp in the summer or next weekend or the following, the June 4th, 5th personal statement launch, you might meet Sarah at one of those. And she is a great, very experienced teacher and college counselor herself. And I bet you'll really enjoy her. We complement each other well. So I'm going to go ahead and put my slides up on the screen. And if it's like last time, I had a little bit of interesting times sometimes with the sharing of the screen. So you'll just be patient with me. And here we go. So tell me what you're seeing. Do you see my notes or do you see just the launch screen? Can somebody chat, or Patrick, can you unmute and tell me that? Yeah.
I see the launch screen.
Okay, perfect. Great. So things to get us started off is I would love you to respond in the chat to any of these questions. Okay, here's the question. Who makes you laugh more than anyone? I have an answer for me, but what's your answer? That's a question. Or what superpower would you most like to have? That could be another question. Or what are you grateful for? So you can do all three, or you can choose one and answer it. Who makes you laugh more than anyone? What superpower would you most like to have? Or what are you grateful for? Let's see. Sounds like Ruby likes to laugh at her sister, or she's grateful for her, or that she'd like to have her sister as her superpower. But I bet it's the laughing one. Yeah. I was thinking my dog for that one. Yeah. Oh, and Turner says that it's both her sister for both the laugh and the grateful. That's great. I have my little dog somewhere here, and I'm super grateful that he's not barking. If any of you have been to my house, sometimes he barks right at the beginning. So I'm so grateful he's not doing that right now. Great. Well, I'm glad each of you is here. I'm really excited for this workshop series because even though really what you're focusing on right now in your life is, thank you, Patrick, what you're focusing on right now in your life is like finishing up classwork, exams, maybe there's prom, maybe there are end of year athletic events, other extracurricular events. It's also like giving you a sneak peek into thinking about your future and where you're going after high school. And it's a great time while we're here still in the school moment to get a few things taken care of to launch you into thinking about college applications for the summer. I didn't want you to go away from school without a solid start to that college application process so that you have some momentum to be moving through the summer. And so the big start for today is getting a picture of applications overall, how it works, how you find out what you're supposed to submit where, and then launching into one part of the activities, one part of the application, which is where you list out your activities and you list a little blurb about each activity. And so we're going to do some exercises to get you ready to do that. And that's the big idea of what we're doing here today. Next week, we will pick up from this and extend it. But tonight, this is what we're going to focus on. So big idea overall, like the 10,000 foot view of a college application is that it presents a picture of you. And you are like a puzzle. You have many, many different pieces to you, many activities, many important people in your life, many experiences, many different components that together make you. And so the college application is meant to show all of those things together. Here is, like if I were applying, here's Brennan. Here are the pieces that make up Brennan. And does Brennan have a good place here at this school? Would Brennan be a good fit here? Yes, she would, because she has these pieces. Or when I'm looking for a college, I'm looking for a college that would really celebrate those various pieces of me. So, in your workbook or on your blank piece of paper, whichever you have right there with you, I'd invite you to do some drawing, do some sketching, do some list making about the components of the pieces, the puzzle pieces that make up that whole picture of you. So, what are some things that you might include? Things like your important relationships, your maybe your family, your friends, your schooling, the schoolwork that you do. Then you might go over like, what else? I've got extended family. I might have a religious community. I might have a neighborhood community. I might have an identity community, part of my ethnic identity or my socioeconomic or my any kind of identity community. I've got extracurricular activities, ways I spend my time. I've got maybe music or things I like to do when nobody else is there. What are all of the parts of you? I'm going to be quiet unless you have questions while you sketch, draw, take some notes about that. Questions? Since I can't see you, feel free to chime in or put in the chat um, where you are in this process. Like if you're ever like done and just waiting, twiddling your thumbs, let me know. Otherwise, keep working on sketching, drawing, getting into that creative part of your brain or your list making part of your brain. What are the key pieces of you that when somebody looks at your application, you want to make sure they see the different pieces of the puzzle of you? Another 30 seconds for now, and then we'll come back together and check in about where you're at. Okay. So you can finish up while I'm talking. On this slide, I'm noticing that there are two parts. The college application, I'm suggesting that the college application offers a coherent picture of you that fits all of the pieces together. And you might feel like, whoa, I definitely do not feel coherent right now, right? Like I've got a lot of different pieces of me. If somebody asked me, what's the glue that keeps it all together? I don't know if I know the answer to that right now. That is totally great and no problem and fine. And during the next 6 months, as we're working to identify the colleges to which you want to for sure apply, identifying what your strengths are, what your interests are, what you want to bring to a college campus, what you want to show off, it's going to come together that you're going to have this coherent idea of you and the pieces that make you special that you have to give to a college campus. I can tell you for sure that there is a story there that you will be able to tell, and it's going to be a great one. And I'm really excited for you as you launch into this process. When it says don't leave out any important pieces of information, don't worry, because today you don't have to make sure you have them all. Today we're brainstorming, we're trying to think of some of those important pieces, and you have time over the next few months to be remembering and to be talking with family and talking with friends. What are those most important parts of me? You can ask other people, what are the parts that you see in me? What do you think I would bring to a college? And over time of listening and listening to your still small voice inside of you, you will get this idea of a coherent picture that fits all of the pieces together and put that forward in your college application. And that's what we're going to be working on together. So the actual college application is a form that has different components. And the goal is to show that beautiful picture of you through those different forms. The first is about your personal information and family background, simple things like where you live and the demographics of your family and what level of schooling your family has had and what languages they speak and those kinds of things. And then there's another section about your transcript, the classes you took, the grades you got, the options of classes that you took when you were in high school, given the other options available to you, whether you changed any schools, all of that. Your transcript will be part of your application. Another part is your activities list, where you'll list out like a category of something you did. For example, I'm thinking of some of you did an internship with a radio station, and you can write about that. There's the title and the organization and the hours and all of that, but then there's also a little blurb where you say what you did there and what impact you had and what sense you make of it. And we're going to work on that in a little bit. There's also, this section on letters of recommendation, and we're going to talk more about that in one-on-ones, but one will come from your counselor. And most of you go to big public high schools where your counselor knows you a little bit, maybe, but maybe not at all. And that is really fine. They have particular letters that they'll send, and we'll talk about whether it makes sense to try to get them to individualize your letter or not. But you will for sure have that letter that will go out from your counselor, and you don't really need to do that much to make sure that happens. It's with your teachers, and we can follow up on this one-on-one, that you are going to ask for teachers who do know you well, to put forward that piece of your academic self, how you show up in a classroom. That's going to be part of that picture of you. And the final one is something you've probably heard lots about, is that you get a chance to write about yourself in a personal statement, in supplemental essays. There's also place where you can just fill in any additional context that you want the college to know about you, maybe explaining something with your grades or with your letters, even that, you know, your counselor doesn't know you well, whatever it is, right? There's a place to write about all that stuff. So those are all of the components of the application. And this next slide is also in your workbook. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I wanted you to a list of all of the different components of the application. So this table shows very clearly all of the different things that are involved, and we'll be working on that step by step in our work together over the next few months. But something to highlight right now is that this part, the recommendations from teachers, teacher one and teacher two, this spring, when you are done with testing, which should be soon now, if not right now, but it's a great idea to do the ask of teacher one and teacher two. Will you please be a recommender for me? And there are some support documents in Council More about that if you'd like, and we can talk about that in our one-on-one meetings. So there's a ton of stuff here. I'm not expecting that you're reading this page carefully now, but I wanted you to have it, and I wanted you to see that there are a lot of components, and so it's smart to think about, what do I want colleges to see, like those beginning things that you reflected on, and want to make sure that colleges get those key pieces. Speaking of that, I didn't get to check in with you about how those previous documents went, about the picture of you. So be thinking about if there's anything from there that you'd want to share, and I'll pick that back up after this slide. So today we're going to focus on two parts of the list of things that are in the college application: the personal information and family background section that you can put into a common application, and the activities list. So we're going to work on both of those things today and next week. That's what the focus is of this workshop. And then the workshop on June 4th or 5th is focused on the personal statement and essays. So getting back for a minute to this slide with the puzzle of you and the coherent picture that fits together, did anybody have anything they wanted to share, or would you be willing to share one component or multiple components of you that you brainstormed there? What are some things that you want to make sure colleges share about or know about you? Anybody willing to put that in the chat or unmute and share? Welcome to Preston, who has just joined us. We just are launching and talking about how the college application is a picture of you, all of the different things that make you special, all of the different experiences that you've had that you are going to bring with you to college. And you're going to focus in a few areas of things that are most important to you to make sure that you're in there. So I was giving examples earlier of things about family, maybe about community identity, maybe about extracurricular activities, work you do at school. Those are some of the big buckets that you might want to make sure to include in your college application. And together, as we're creating that application, we're going to make sure not to leave out any key piece of you. Okay. And so that's why we're doing some brainstorming today, and we'll move forward through the months, making sure to include all the key parts. All right, so Preston, we did these things. These things are in the email from me. There should be links to the slides and to the workbook, and I invite you to get those out now so that you can follow along both in the slides, and the workbook has like step one, step two activities that we're going to be doing in it. So I invite you to open those up.
Great. Sorry, I'm late.
Yeah, glad you're here. Ruby, you put your connection and your role as a community a leader, an organizer, and a youth voice advocate. Awesome. What I like about that is that it's like a big bucket, right? That it's your connection to your community, and it has many different parts of it, but they're not yet specific, right? Like ultimately, that's going to be specific. You're going to have examples of extracurriculars, you're going to have examples of moments, times, people, etc. But right now, the way you're talking about it is like a big bucket um, of a big piece of the puzzle of Ruby. So that's great. Thank you. Anybody else want to share? It's cool. Okay, so our goals for today are two. In the first section, we're going to be focusing on getting you into the application, the purpose of the apps, the types of apps, how to get into the common application. The second part is going to be focused on fleshing out the list of all the things that you spend your time on. We call that an activity list. Today, we're not going to do the actual typing in of the activity list, but we're going to be working on a template to help understand why it's important and how to do it. And then we're meeting again next weekend if you're able to do that. And if you have any time to work on this, if you don't have big exams, some of you do, some of you don't, then you can do some homework to extend the work we've done today and to be ready for the next step next weekend. So that's the big goal for today. All right. I forgot to say at the beginning, I hope you'll jump in either on the chat or by unmuting if you have questions at any time, because I bet that you have questions and you're like, oh, I bet that's a silly question. I bet everybody else knows that. I know teachers always say this, but this is really true for me, that probably if you have a question, everybody else has the question, or at least one other person has the question. So please make sure that you speak up or put it in the chat, okay? Any questions anytime. All right. So before you open an application account, because all of the applications these days are online, before you do that, there are two steps. So the first step is to think about which schools are on your draft college list and research which applications your schools accept. So if you're on a device right now that allows you to open Counsel More, I'm going to invite you to do that while I'm talking through these next few things. Counselmore.com will have the might be .org, huh? I don't remember. Have information about the schools that you're thinking of and which applications they use. So I'll have one of you screen share, or I will screen share about that in a second, but I invite you to start that process right now while I talk about the different applications. So technically, there are different platforms on which you will put your information, right? So we talked about the different components of the application, the background and the transcripts and the grades and the activities and the personal statement. All of that information will go into different formats depending on which college to which you're applying. And most colleges, up to about 1,000 colleges and universities in the United States and a few abroad, use this common application. And so that's probably what we're going to focus on today, opening up an account there if you don't already have one, and if you do have one, using it and continuing it. And then the other types of applications are University of Washington still uses the coalition application. So that is another one. It's very, very similar to the common application, but it's different. And so it requires a different login and it requires you to put in your information again. So you can't use it over and over again. There are unique systems. I should have put in also Wazoo, Washington State, University of California, all the University of Californias, the Cal States, and the University of Texas schools are examples of unique college application systems where you have to put in your information again. And the University of California system has all different essays also. And so if you are applying to a bunch of University of California system schools, we're going to have a workshop later, this summer and early fall about specifically how to do those applications because they are very different from the others. The Coalition and the Common are very, very similar to each other. And good news for Washington is that Western, Central, and Eastern Washington universities are all going to the Common Application. You won't see them on there right now if you open up an account and look for them. But as of August 1st, when they reopen the Common Application, those schools will be there. So it's really a good place to start the Common Application, and that's probably what we'll do today. If you're applying to an historically Black college or university, the HBCUs, many of them accept the Common Application, and they also have a Common Black application that can be used easily to apply to multiple HBCUs. And finally, if you're interested in applying to schools in the United Kingdom and some in other European countries, there's a system called UCAS. And we won't be offering that as a class, but there are many, many recordings of how to do from UCAS itself and how to do those applications. All right. Okay, I'm going to go on to this, but then I'm going to have you do some questions and stuff. So if you are in Council More, and you go to your college list, this one with the grad cap on it, you'll see what you don't see here in the picture, a little gray heart, or maybe it's already green, that's to the left of the name of the university. And if you go into your list and you click on the heart, it'll give you an opportunity to rate the college either green heart or yellow thumbs up or blue thumbs down. And for the purposes of finding out what type of application a college accepts, give the college a green heart, and then it will show up in this app tracker. And so if there's somebody who already has it up and would be willing to share screen as they do that, that would be awesome. Otherwise, I will get into my Council More and share it. Is there anyone who's available to do that? Okay. All right. Well, you're going to watch me navigate. So I'm going to go to Council More, and I've got it right here. And I'm going to click, oh good, it's sample student, perfect. And I'm going into the college list. So the first thing that comes up is the tile version. And it would also work to give it hearts in the tile version. So right here, like I've got Harvey Mudd College, doesn't have any feedback yet. So I can click on it, give it a heart. Or I can go into the grid, the spreadsheet version, and I can find a school that doesn't have any rating yet, and I can give it a heart. Ultimately, I'd want to go back and change the settings, right, if I don't actually want to apply to all 12 schools on my list. But the ones that I do want to apply to, get a heart, and then it can take you to the app tracker. And here in App Tracker, the first column after the university name should be the place where you can find the type of application that your college accepts. And so this says Common App member, yes, no, basically. But for University of Washington, it knows that it accepts the Coalition application. So it lists that there. So let me see down if there's anything else. Looks like it's not letting me go down for some reason. Okay, well, maybe I just have 6 on my app tracker. Yes, I do. Okay, so if I wanted to add more or find out more from my 12, I'd go down here and go over to the gray heart, give it a green, 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 give it a green. Okay, and then I'd go over to the app tracker, and now I'd have all 12 in there, and I can see in the Common App, okay, the ones, that accept the Common App are everything but University of Washington, because you see, even though it says that the Western accepts the Coalition app, that's actually, yes, correct. And I'm sure they'll continue to accept the Coalition app. But I know for a fact that as of August 1st, they're switching to the Common App. And so anything that we do today in setting up a Common Application will apply to Western Washington University. So for me, given the 12 places I'm considering applying, I don't already know for sure. I don't have a finalized draft list, but I'm just going to explore the ones that I'm potentially thinking about. It would make a lot of sense for me to open up a Common Application account and start on there, because everyone except for University of Washington has the Common App. So let me leave that there and pause and see if anybody has any questions about that. Can you give me some feedback about where you are? If you're even logged into CouncilMore, what questions you have. Preston has no questions. Preston, are you in there? You can see? Great. Okay. Great. Okay. So that's the first step. Figure out what kind of application you need to open. And then the second step is to figure out with which email you're going to open the Common Application or the Coalition application. Thank you, Turner. Appreciate that. Any questions about it? All right. So the next step is to figure out which email address you're going to use. And so for everything college, it could be that you want to create an account just for that, because you're going to start to put your name, if you haven't already, you're going to start to put your name on college email lists or interest lists or webinar lists, and you're going to start to get an avalanche of email. And so if you'd like to set up an account just for that, you could do something like first name, last name, college at emailprovider.com. But in any case, your email address that you use to apply to college should be a personal but professional email. So not a school address, but something that has respectability. It's not like cutest stuffed animal that I had from the time I was 8 email address, right? It's something like first name, last name at email provider. In your workbook, I've got a link to, and I think this, if you've got the slides open, this email address link is a live link to go to Google to create a new email address if you'd like that, but you can also do it with whatever email provider you have. And if you haven't already done this, I invite you to do that before you open up the account. Any questions about that? How many of you are already at that, or you could give me an indication in the chat. Are you like, yes, I already have this email address, or I need to make one now? Great, Preston's ready to go. So Preston, if you want to, great. Okay, so it looks like we're ready. Great. Ruby, you might be making one and that's fine, or maybe you have one. Okay. So next up is for you to spend some time figuring out which application you're going to start with. And if it is the Common Application, great, Ruby, thank you. If it's the Common Application, then I'd like you to find the link in your workbook. There's a link to the Common Application, or you can just Google it, Common Application, and it'll come up right there with creating an account. If any of you already has an account, totally fine. Just try to remember how to get in. And you can go ahead and start figuring that out and creating the account takes a little while, and I will log in there. If you have any questions, though, feel free to put them in the chat or shout out. Thanks, Turner. Starting again. um, Welcome back from our break. I might have missed recording the part that was about the Common App and completing it. And so basically we completed or did the parts that students knew about the profile, the family information, and the education. We're not really doing the testing section or anything about grades or current year courses. And probably you didn't know everything about your family information. And so between now and a week from now, the next time we have this session, I invite you to do the research that you need to do in order to do the profile information, to do the family information, maybe to do the sections about your high school that you could know now. But basically, you don't want to do any writing sections or anything that will refresh in August. You just want to do these basic demographic type information questions because those will save. Those will be part of your application. When it refreshes in August, it'll stay right there. And you're completing it as if you were a 12th grader already. I mean, I know you're a rising senior and you're so close, you're almost there, but you're filling it out as if you were a senior. And so any information that you don't have now, because you will have it when you're a senior, great, just leave it blank, press continue, move on. And what we did before we moved out of the common application was to go into the upper right-hand corner and to log out. And when you do that, it saves all the work that you've done, and make sure that you've saved your email address and your password so you can get in there again. Okay, and so for next time we get together, if you can have completed as much as you can of your common application, first of all, you'll feel awesome. Second of all, you'll be ahead of all your friends. And third of all, we'll be able to look at it together if you have any questions. So please make a note now or during the week when you're filling things out if you have questions about the way things should be filled out, right? What do they mean by this question? What's the best way to answer X, Y question? Okay. All right. So next up, we're going to go, oh, right. And we showed how there's a section in the Common App that asks specifically about your activities. And so the next thing we're going to spend time on during this class today is getting ready for that activities section. Okay, so thinking about how you spend your time, you might already have a list of the ways that you spend your time. Maybe when you were on Council More, you took time to put in your participation information under the grad cap student information section. For the counselor, it has this pencil, but I'm pretty sure for you, it has a little grad cap, says student information, and then scrolling down under there, there's something called participation. Some of you filled that out when we started working together or more recently. And if you didn't, no worries. But these are the kinds of categories that the Common Application asks for. Activities, they mean things like hobbies or clubs or things that don't fit in any other category. They ask about awards and honors that are particularly related to academics or any of those other activities. They ask about work experience. They ask about responsibilities, both home, community, family. Um, they ask about volunteering. Oops, sorry. And they ask about athletics. There are probably lots of other options too. I saw that the list seems to be expanding on the Common App for ways that you can categorize your contribution. Basically, anything that is important to you when you think at the beginning you were thinking about the pieces of the puzzle that make up the story of you. What are those areas of your life where you do something that isn't on your transcript, right? Those components of the application that are already there. Your transcript shows your grades, it shows your rigor, shows your courses, shows everything, but it doesn't show all of this stuff, right? So this is your chance to talk about the other things that you do. So it might be here in Council More. It might be that you have a LinkedIn profile. Shout out to my son Ezra, who's sharing his LinkedIn profile with us. Some of you started that with me. You made yourself a LinkedIn profile, or you already had one before we started working together. And that's a way to have a list of activities, the ways you spend your time, but to put it in a social media, professionally oriented platform that you can share with others, with employers, with other people that you're looking to connect interests with. So you might have that, or you might want to make that this week. And the second is, the other thing you might already have is a resume. If you're looking for resume examples, you can click on the slides here in resume examples, and it'll go to a Google Doc or a folder actually within the Schooling Doula shared resources that has a bunch of different resume examples. And then there's also this link goes to this template that you can use to complete a resume. So I invite you while we're working in the next week or two on this activities list, if you have some time and you don't already have a LinkedIn profile or a resume, to spend some time creating one. The point of this section of the 3 slides, though, is to say, maybe you already have a list of your activities. If you don't have a list of your activities, now's your moment. I'm going to give you a few minutes to either find these things, your LinkedIn, your resume, your Council More. And I invite you, if you don't already have one, to either in Council More or on a piece of paper right next to your computer or in your workbook that you've got up, make just a list of things like band and soccer and robotics and whatever are the big titles buckets of the ways that you spend your time. Any questions? I'm going to put this back up there that might trigger you. Any questions about what to do for these next few minutes? Okay, so take 2 minutes. I'll check in at 2 minutes to see how you're doing with just a list of the activities that you spend most of your time doing. Or if you've got those other LinkedIn and resume and stuff like that, you're pulling that up, reminding yourself of what they are, and maybe making a list of the key things that you would want to include on a college application. All right. The nice thing is you don't have to be all the way done, right? You've got this first draft that you're working on as a list of your activities, or maybe you've got one already in your resume, your LinkedIn, but you're checking it over and seeing if there's anything you want to add. And you might want to check in with your family or check in with your friends. Like, how do I spend my time, right? It's totally legitimate if you spend a ton of time playing video games, let's figure out the way that you're going to spin that to talk about the benefits of that, or how you do that, how you spend your time, what the impact of that is on you, on your friends, um, on your wellness, etc. So whatever it is that you do and however you spend your time, taking out the trash, all the things, the family responsibilities that we have could be something that you want to show. It just depends, right? At the beginning, we talked about the different pieces of you that you want to be showing to the college. Like, here's who I am and what I'd be likely to bring to you. This is your chance to think strategically about which of those things do we want to share with colleges in the activities list. Okay, so you list them all out and then we'll discern which are the ones that make sense to share. Any questions that have come up for you while you're writing that list? Questions that I heard from earlier group? Okay, I played sports all 4 years. I played club sport, I played sport for the school? Is it just one? Is it multiple? And the answer is it depends. So it depends on how many slots you have. It depends on how important those things are to you. And so for now, just list them as separate things. And then over time, you can group them if it makes sense to. Anything else come up for you as questions? Feel free to put them in the chat or shout it out. Okay, hearing nothing, I'm going to go on to, oh, great. Okay, good. Really good question in the chat. I'm going to go back one. The question is, if we did activities previously, can we still list them? Like, if we're not doing them right now in 11th grade, and we stopped because it didn't fit our major interests, maybe the job ended, the pandemic happened. I mean, seriously, a lot of kids are going to be like, I didn't really do much of anything for a couple of years there, which makes sense. But what did you do during that time? Okay, but to answer the question, yes, you certainly can list anything that you've done. Particularly, they're going to ask you for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So if there are things that you did in middle school, you're probably not going to be able to put them on the activities list itself. But if it's something that was really important to you, you can end up weaving it into one of your essays, one of your supplemental essays, etc. And for right now, I would put everything you're thinking of, right? And then you can whittle it down as you get closer to actually, getting clear about what story you're trying to tell about yourself. And there might be a great story about why you quit the activity, right? Maybe not, right? But it could be that you learned a lot about yourself through that activity, and stopping the activity was an important learning opportunity. And so you might want to be telling that story. Depends. That was a great question. Any other questions about making a list of activities? Okay, well, feel free to jump in at any time. Next up is you're going to be like, what? I thought we were talking about activities. You want us to think about values? Yes. So just like at the beginning, when I was encouraging you to think about the puzzle of you and having many pieces that make up this beautiful story that is you and how special you are and what you're going to contribute to a college, the same is true when we're thinking about your writing about yourself in anything, your activities list, your essays. Activities list is super critical and important. It's the only way that the colleges are really going to get to see what's important to you and how you spend your time. And so whether you think about it or not, what's going to come out through that activities list are key important values to you. And so it's really important that we think about these values before you do the writing, okay? So that we can be intentional about making sure that the story of you includes those values that are most important to you. And so in your workbook right now, I invite you to open that up. And the second to last page has a list of values on a big sheet of paper. It's also on these next two slides, so you can do it that way, but these two slides are harder to manage than the workbook itself. So if you have the workbook, I invite you to find that, link to it, and find that second to last page. And it has at the top, it says values exercise. And it invites you to highlight or bold either one, or both, I guess, the top 10 values that you connect with most from the list. Now, there's also a space at the bottom to add values that you don't find on the list. That's totally great. Feel free to write in as many values as are important to you that you don't see there. So the goal is you're going to go from 10 values that are most important to you. Then you're going to think about, okay, which are the 5 of those 10 that are most important? And you're going to underline those or indicate it in some way. And finally, you're going to italicize or otherwise indicate your top 3. And then even I might ask you that for today, in this moment, this one little moment, what is feeling like your number one value? So I'm going to be quiet unless you have questions, which I hope you will put in the chat or unmute and share, to do this exercise. I'm going to, I'll toggle back and forth on the screen between these two, or maybe I'll pull up the workbook and put the whole thing on the screen. And so I'm going to be quiet while you consider what your top 10 values are. I'm going to find that document. Sorry. Here we go. Okay, going to the values list. Here we go. Do you guys see the values list? Is that what's being shared? You're probably on your own. Thank you, Preston. When you're heading towards being done with the top 10, put one of them in your chat in the chat so I know where you're at. Nice, Turner. Adventure. Challenge you to go on now and, oh, awesome. Um, find, uh, nice. Personal development, nice. Those of you who have gotten you've got your top 10, now try to narrow it to your top 5, then 3, then 1 for today. Super hard, right? We all have lots of different values, but this is just an exercise. Try to help you discern what's most important to you. What are the values you want to make sure emanate from your writing? There's really no rush. This is just such a big topic, but we're going to have about 1 more minute and then we'll go on to the next part. Okay. If you do feel like for this day in this moment you have top 3 or you have a top 1 that you're willing to share, feel free to do that in the chat. I was just thinking for me, I think I don't know that I see it on here. Let me know if you do, but I think I would put on authenticity. It might be there, but that's what's coming up for me. I'm just going to add it to that section at the bottom. You could feel free to do that on your own workbook page, is add in something that feels like really important to you. Authenticity for me is coming up because this whole process of really discovering like what's special about each of you and what story do you have to, nice, Ruby, thank you. What story you have to share with colleges, like you're going to be such a gift to those colleges, right? I mean, they're lucky to have you. And thinking about what you have to share, it's like you're really your authentic self. It's not about like what the impressive activities are that like quote unquote look good on a college application. How many times have you heard that, right? Colleges actually are quite hip to that. They understand that people are motivated by this fear of not looking good and they want to look good. And colleges usually say, at least all of the admissions officers that I know, say that they can see right through that. And what they're really looking for is someone to be fresh, honest, vulnerable, and authentic about what they've been through and what they're going to bring to a college campus. And so for me today in this moment, authenticity is my number 1 value. I see some here: adventure, personal development, self-expression. Is there anything else that anybody else wants to add about values that feel important to you today? Okay. So back to this now. When I switched to the slides again, now can you still see the slides? I hope so. Let me know if not, okay? It's like I'm muted talking to the camera again. Okay, so if you're in your workbook, or if you have the slides open, you'll see this, and the workbook will have templates of this. And so I do encourage you to open your workbook if you don't already have it open. What we're going to invite you to do is flesh out the list of activities that you have created already and thinking about the values, the things that are most important to you, self-expression, personal development, adventure, authenticity, and see if you can flesh out, like do a bunch of writing about each activity. So like this says activity 1 and has 3 question marks. You would, delete the question marks and you'd fill in the name of the activity. And you'd do one of these tables for each activity that's really important to you that's on your list. And you'd fill out each of these columns, okay? And this instruction one gives you tips about how to do it. And then if you scroll down in your workbook, you'll see some examples of 2 different students and what they had filled out in their section. But this one, what I did, the key here is active verbs. And so if you go to your workbook or to in the slides in the underneath notes part, in this slide or one on either side of it, there's an active link to this epic list of activities verbs. And I know I have that up here too, so I'll pull it up in a second. But it's just like a massive list of verbs that refer to different kinds of activities. And so I invite you to use that as like a little cheat sheet to give you some ideas about verbs that you might use to describe your activity. And then you're going to write about problems that you solved. Now, those problems could be very small, little tiny problems, like you do a sport because you want to improve your coordination, or you want to meet new friends, or you want to improve your muscle strength, or, etc. They can be completely personal, relatively small things, or they can be things that do ripple out to your community. Like you made a story that affected people. It helped people understand something that they didn't understand before, or you created a tool that other people can use. It can be big like that, or it can be super small, okay? And you'll see some examples. And then you write about the lessons you learned, the skills you gained, and you might infuse values that you've had. Like, so think about if adventure is your number 1 value or one of your 10 values, that there are some lessons that you learned related to that from that activity. Impact you had, that is really, really important. And to think about, what kind of impact did I have? Did I just make someone smile? It can be an impact like that. Or it could be that, you contributed to making like 1,000 slices of pizza, so some contribution, some impact that you've had, and we'll look at examples. And the last column is, how do you connect that learning or that connection from that activity to the activity beyond itself? Like you realized that you needed a whole bunch more sleep, or you learned that you really enjoy cooking and you've since gone on to cook for your family. It could be something simple like that, or it could be, wow, I discovered a whole new field of artificial intelligence and now I'm volunteering in that area, or thinking about majoring in that, or something like that. So for each activity, I'm going to ask you to flesh this out. I'm going to look at an example with you now, but let me tell you that this will help you both with the activities list and also with many other parts of your application. Students who take the time to do this BB's exercise well, best extracurricular activities brainstorming exercise I've ever seen, which is from Ethan Sawyer, the college essay guy, who I completely recommend to you. The people who do the BB's exercise before they do the activities list, before they do the essays and the rest of the application, end up having, an out of the park application, way, way better than people who don't do this. So if there is one thing that you do in order to improve your application, it is this, and doing this well. And so if between now and next week when we come back together, you have done at least a draft of several of these for the activities that you have, we'll be able to go over it together and figure out how to quote unquote up level it to make it as strong as it can be. Before we have you head into doing the activities list, you will be completely set. That's like my best advice to you for sure. So looking at an example, This person did rowing, so they took the question marks away and they put in the word rowing. And so they focused on what they did, and you can see that all of the verbs are highlighted. And in your actual example in the workshop, I mean, in the workbook, I think there are even more than these 5 verbs. But I recommend that when you're doing it, you do this too, like draft it out. It's messy. It's, doesn't have correct grammar. It's only partial phrases. You don't even need periods or, it's just like get it out there. But then go back and highlight. You can't see the example. Thank you. Screen sharing's frozen. Okay, great. Try one more time. Thanks, guys. Is it coming back? Yeah, okay, great. You see the rowing example. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. There is just nothing better than feedback. Maybe I'm really valuing feedback and collaboration right now. That's something I'm very much valuing. So you can see the verbs now are bolded. And so I'd like you in this section to lead with verbs. Okay, what are the things you actually did? And then here are the problems that got solved. And so when I first look at problems that get solved, I'm thinking, okay, like world hunger or cure for cancer. But no, the problem that she was solving is that she was slower than most girls at the beginning, but then she, got up to speed. She didn't know how to row correctly or effectively. She was too unfit in her view. She had bad form, etc. And so by doing the rowing and the attending and the supporting and all those spending the hours, she worked on those problems. And then lessons that she learned and skills she gained, big ideas about patience and success through paying attention and challenging. She talks about the impact that she had on herself or others. She started to love nature. She met some new friends outside of her original circle. And the connection that she had beyond were things like she thought more carefully about how she spent her time. And this last very curious one that I want to know more about is that she changed her whole approach to her whole definition of living. So that makes me really want to think about that. Okay, so let's do a values scan right here. So if you were reading through this BB's exercise for this person's rowing, what do you think are some big values that when this person looked at the values scan really popped out? I mean, at the values list, what popped out for them? Or what do you see as values that come out in these activities? Please put those in the chat or unmute and share them. Great, thank you. Team and community. Anybody else? Patience, yeah. Passion, thank you. Dedication, nice. So next week, when you bring a draft, we can go over it and look through and see before you tell us what values you had as most important to you, we can look at your draft and say, okay, well, here are the kinds of words that are coming up for us, right? And we'll do a values scan together. And I invite you to do that when you're doing your own work, is to read it over. I often read it out loud to myself and look for the values or look for, what's coming up. Because when I'm hearing it out loud, that's when I hear things that I didn't see when I was writing. All right. So before we move on from this, this slide, and it's also in your workbook, are questions that you can ask yourself to help you brainstorm. Like if you're feeling stuck about how to fill out the BB's exercise, you look at this slide or look at in your workbook, there's a a list of these 25 questions to help generate some ideas. And so what I'd like to do is give you 5 minutes. I know it's not very long. We got a little bit of a late start. For you to spend some time, choose one activity and try to flesh it out as much as you can do in 5 minutes. So find your workbook or use a piece of paper and pencil and start fleshing that out. What I'm going to do is put the workbook, no, I'll put the verbs list on the screen. Does that sound good? Or what would be most helpful to put on the screen? Just leave this example up. Maybe I'll find the verbs list and I'll put the link in the chat. How about that? And so go ahead for 5 minutes to try to flesh that out. Unmute if you've got questions or put it in the chat. I'll stop share for just a sec to pick up that link. Ah, of course, here it is now. How to make that bigger. Oops, sorry. That was one more time. Went away, so I'm going to go back to this. another 30 seconds or so for this opportunity this time, but you can keep working on it for sure. Okay, so give me a little bit of interaction or indication on how that's going for you, what questions you have as you're doing that. There are templates enough for 5 in your workbook, but feel free to just copy and paste and create additional templates. So don't use up all 5 and then be stuck without one. Of course, it's not hard to make another one, but just keep copying them. Questions, thoughts? Anybody willing to share a little bit, just a snippet, one line, one sentence, one phrase from yours? Nice. Okay. So thank you, Patrick, for the update that during those 5 minutes, you got to what you did and problems you solved, and there's still lots more to go. And I think that that's true, that each one of these expects to take about 15 minutes or so. Could be longer, could be shorter, depending on the activity. And you want to do this for things that are like important to you, right? Like not things that are kind of throwaway that you probably aren't going to write about a lot. These are things that, like, when you think about the things that are most important to the puzzle of you, that are worth really fleshing out. So, great. So I'm wrapping it up, even though I know that you're not done because of the timing. We got a little bit of a late start, but we still want to wrap up as much as we can on time, because I'm sure you have other things that you're planning to do with your day. My hope is that you will have some time during this next week to flesh out at least 3 of activities in this format. Now, if you're an IB student and you're doing exams this week, this is not more important than that. So if you are done with your APs and you're able to focus, 45 minutes on doing something like this, I think it'll really, really pay off for you. If you can do 6 in an hour and a half broken up over the week, that will really, really pay off also. Anything you do now, you won't have to do later. So it really, really will help if you have time. But again, school is absolutely the most important thing. Other, athletic events that you have going on, all of that is more important, because this can be done later. But it would be great if you do some of it now. All right. So between now and a week from now, if you're joining us on Saturday or if you're coming on Sunday next time, here are some things that you could do if you have time to do it, and it would really, really benefit you in the long run. Number 1, make sure you've got a list of activities. And if you have time, think about how much time you spent on each of them, what the name of it is, what organization you did it through. And you can complete that in the participation information section on CouncilMore if you'd like, or you might make a LinkedIn profile or a resume if you don't already have one, or you might edit those if you had them, or you might just continue to have a list of activities on a piece of paper. Whatever you do, clarifying, spending a little time revising that list is something you could do this week. Number 2 is to complete that BB's exercise for at least 3 to 4 activities. And as we said, it's likely to take 15 minutes each. And finally, going into that common application with input from your parents or from school or from wherever it needs to be, and finishing up those parts and making a list of any questions that you have that you want us to make sure to talk about at the next session. And so I thought we might have a little more time for questions, but we don't. We got a later start, and there were a few technical things, but we do have some time for questions. So if while I've been going on and you've been in your world doing what you need to do, you've had some questions about anything we've talked about tonight or anything related to applying to college, will you please ask it now in the chat or unmute and let us know? Could be about accessing council more. You forget how to do that. It could be how to get into your Google folder. It could be how to get into anything. Just no question is too silly. Okay, I'm hearing nothing, which means to me it's 5:55 on a Saturday and I want to be doing some different things, which is cool. But if you do end up having any questions, I'll stop the recording and maybe you'll be more likely to share them. Next time, we are going to review examples that you've completed from your BB's exercise. We're going to look at real life examples and see if we can find some values and some real strengths and some things that maybe you want to work on for next time. We'll give you time to revise the homework that you did and add additional activities. And we're going to work on starting to turn those BB's activities, fleshing out of activities into an activities list on a Google Doc, and then ultimately it'll get ready to go onto the Common App activities list. We probably will not complete the Common App activities list in total by the next time, given what we were able to accomplish today, but you could certainly start on that and looking at how it's doing. We'll also review any questions you have from your Common App draft sections, and we'll leave some time for questions and answers. And so again, the homework is activities list draft, BBs for 3 to 4 activities, depending on how much time you have. Again, you know, if it's like IB exam week, then maybe not, right? But if you possibly can, be great. And the common application draft sections. Any other input or questions? All right, I'm going to stop the recording and then maybe I'll hear from you guys.